What is up, my aesthetic boys? It's Fresh, back with another video. Today we have an episode of r/Supernova Revenge, along with some r/Nuclear Revenge. I hope you guys enjoy. Pro-divorce. Throwaway, as this might not make me very popular, even in pro-revenge. This all happened to me a few years ago. I told a friend the story of my divorce and I was told to share. Started a few years ago. I thought we were happy. We were your usual suburban professional couple, financially secure, healthy, good sex life, 2 kids, 14F and 9M at the time. I thought we had a healthy social life. We were going through one of your typical married couple rough patches. Both of us were working long hours, not spending enough time together. We were going through some developmental problems with my son, and tensions in the house were running a little high. I noticed that she was spending a lot more time on her phone texting with her girlfriends. I didn't think much of it. I started making a much more concerted effort to get out of work when I could, help around the house, and be more emotionally available, but over the course of a few weeks, the gulf just kept getting wider. I ended up accidentally finding some messages when I charged up an old iPad for my son to use. Her Facebook Messenger was still logged in, and there were a lot of highly questionable messages with a guy from her hometown who I will call Jim Bob Cooter, or JBC for short. The messages weren't completely inappropriate, but I could tell there were quite a few missing based on the times and context of the messages. I made a mental note to keep an eye on this and went about trying to fix things up. The next day after, I took the day off to knock out some projects that I thought would make her happy and left her some sweet notes reminding her how much I appreciated her. She was once again in the corner of the living room, texting her girlfriends. I took the boy's iPad to the office, opened up Facebook Messenger, and watched in real time as my wife tore me down. Her and JBC were making fun of me. All of my flaws, insecurities, and secrets I entrusted to my partner were now fodder for her and JBC. Not only that, but while there wasn't outright sexting, there was a sexual undertone to the whole conversation, especially when she was bashing my performance in the sack. I managed to take some screenshots but missed a good bit of the messages because as the conversation was unfolding, she was deleting them. I wasn't emotionally capable of confronting her. I stayed in the office until she was asleep and had a couple drinks. I took off the next day and spent some time soul-searching, drinking, and trying to figure out what to do. The wife came home and wanted to know what was wrong, and I just copped out and told her I had a bad day. A couple minutes later, I was watching the iPad as the train wreck kept unfolding. So began a couple of solid weeks of taking screenshots, drinking, and detaching myself from the relationship. I knew there was no going back from this. The messages were now overtly sexual with my wife completely into it, and JBC was sprinkling in I love yous. I consulted a lawyer and got my options and started moving forward. Here's where everything got absolutely surreal. Watching the messages, I found out JBC was coming to town to spend a weekend of quality time with my wife in a pretty nice hotel. I was missing a good bit of the info. They must have had a phone conversation about it at some point, but I was able to infer enough to get the when and where. Sure as hell, the next day the wife is buttering me up and wanting to take a spa weekend with the girls to relax, and when she gets back, we can really focus on our marriage. I go with it all the way. It's the greatest idea she's ever had, and I'll do anything to get us back on track. I get with the lawyer and have him draft a strong separation agreement stating that she would move out, she would get weekend visitation, no child support in the interim until the divorce is final. Then I sit through the most agonizing 2 weeks of my life. After all this, most of my feelings for her are completely gone, and I'm just seething with anger like I've never felt before. D-Day arrives. I take the day off work. I withdraw half of any money in any accounts we're joint in, leaving her half alone. I had already redirected my paycheck to a new bank. I close our money market account and get a cashier's check for her half, and deposit my half in my new account. I stop at Office Max and print out about 75 pages of Facebook Messenger screenshots, and I kill time because I don't want to be at home. She texts me that she's taking off and that she loves me. I tell her to have fun. I show up to the hotel at about 8:30 and call the wife's phone from the lobby. It goes straight to voicemail. They're probably already at it. Whatever. I walk up to the front desk and ask if I can use the phone to be connected to JBC's room. It rings 3 times and he picks up. Hello? JBC, can you send my wife down to the lobby, please? I don't know what you're talking about, bro. Okay then. I guess I'll have to call Mrs. JBC and get her down here. Totally a bluff. I knew he was married and I knew her first name, but that was it. There was inaudible shuffling panic behind the phone. You got 5 minutes. Not even 2 minutes later, my wife comes walking out of the elevator looking a little flustered. I sit her down in the corner of the lobby. She starts spewing BS, saying it's not what it seems, blah, blah, blah. I'm not here to argue. The things that are said in this pile of papers are what's going on. The only way I'm not giving a copy of this to our daughter, your parents, and emailing it to everyone we know is if you move out immediately. Wife was very prideful. Daughter was going through a rebellious teen phase, and her knowing probably would have forever killed their relationship. Wife was also her parents' golden child, and she always worried about what they thought of her. I didn't have much leverage, and shame was my only card to play. Also, her professional life is built up around her image, so I knew she would protect that at all costs. Her, sniffle, mumble, inaudible speaking. This is a check for half of the money market account. I've withdrawn my half of the money from all the other joint accounts. You should have more than enough to get a place. She starts to cry a little. I could almost see the different thoughts and waves of emotions going through her, but now is the time to keep pressing. Here's a separation agreement that I think is more than fair considering what's going on. I'm going to need you to look this over, sign it, and leave it at the house when you get your stuff. Do you want to look through these screenshots? No. Okay, go have fun with JBC. Do not come back to the house or I'm going to send this, holding up the ream of screenshots, to everyone. I bounce out of the lobby and I can hear her start to have a breakdown. I get to the car, drive off to a parking lot, and have my own crying rage fit. Previously, I would have cried in front of her and yelled and whatnot, but I managed to keep it together enough to pull it off. I don't know what she did that night or over the weekend. She texted and called over and over wanting to talk. I just turned the phone off, and by the time Monday afternoon rolled around, there were movers getting her stuff, and she delivered the agreement. I let her have a talk with the kiddos, basically saying, Mommy and Daddy need some time apart, we still love you, etc., etc. Standard divorce talk. After a week, she wants to have a real talk for the first time. I oblige her because I've already got everything together myself, and I've got an idea of what I want, but I should hear her out. She's so sorry. She wants another chance. She wants her family back. She'll do anything. She's on her knees crying into my lap. I have no intention of ever taking her back. I tell her she needs to set up marriage counseling on her own at a time that works for me. I tell her that I can't live with her, but she should be around the children to try to maintain a relationship with them. So starts our new normal of her coming over the house, cooking and having dinner with the kids 3 nights a week. She always saved me a plate. I made myself scarce. Her cleaning the house and doing the kids' laundry, then heading back to her place. We went to counseling. It consisted of her working through her issues with the therapist, trying to figure out why she did it, her begging for forgiveness, and me stoically playing the victim. I was never going to give her another chance. All I wanted to do was kill time, establish myself as the primary caregiver to the kids, and establish her as not having residency in the house. After a few months, I go to my own therapist and get diagnosed with depression and PTSD. I ask my work if it's possible to go to part-time for the foreseeable future to deal with personal issues, and it's no big deal. After 6 months of therapy, I told her that I couldn't forgive her right now, and that I wanted an amicable divorce, but she's still the love of my life, and maybe someday we could give it another try. She was devastated, but agreed to the divorce if I promised to try again someday. Once the divorce was filed, I needed the kids to want to stay with me. I left a Google search for how to survive your wife's infidelity up on the shared PC at home, and I left some printed out infidelity articles not so hidden in the kitchen. My daughter found them and came to me crying. I told her she wasn't supposed to find those, that Mom made a mistake, that Mom still loves her, and that I would always be here for her. My daughter, who used to hold my wife in such high regard, now wouldn't talk to her without screaming, and it crushed her. Not surprisingly, when the court needed statements from the kids a few months later, little brother followed big sister's lead, and they both wanted to stay with dad in the house they grew up in. When the divorce was finalized, I got the house, had to buy out some of her equity, but that's okay. I got primary custody of the kids. I got awarded generous child support due to the differences in our incomes due to me working part-time. Now, for the last 2 years, I've gotten to live in the house with my kids, work part-time, get the now ex to subsidize it for me, And when she takes the kids over the weekends, I get to have my fun with Tinderellas and some friends with benefits I've cultivated. In the eyes of my kids, I'm the patron saint of fatherhood for taking the high road and always being there. In the eyes of my ex, I'm the one that got away that she will always pine for. And I get the bonus of having her come over for sex whenever I want it by dangling that carrot of maybe getting back together. But that is never going to happen. This is a real moral gray area, in my opinion. His wife certainly did something incredibly wrong, something irreconcilable in a marriage. That kind of loss of trust is almost always fatal for a relationship, and certainly this was no exception. The gray area comes in the form of retribution. Is it morally acceptable for him to emotionally manipulate her like that? I know many would argue that she brought this on herself. I'm not saying that side is wrong at all. I just also see the potential for dissent against the level of life-ruining manipulation. I definitely think that this is a story of supernova revenge caliber because the life that she knew is gone forever, and her new life, one of being kind of on the hook from her ex-husband, in his words, the one that got away, and his new life in the eyes of his kids is being a saint, that's very different. And for the foreseeable future, I don't think there's a way that she can really change any of those things anymore. Someone stole $25,000 from me and ended up costing him $500,000. A preamble. I was married to a very OCD and pragmatic man. For example, for him, a big romantic gesture had been to leave me alone for 24 hours at the hospital right after I had our son so he could go pay bills and mow the lawn. 20 years later, I do understand he really did express love this way, but that's another story. I was in dire need of physical contact because he'd never touch me unless he wanted very bland sex, and also never ever kissed me. This story is not about him, it's only a preamble. So, I divorce him. Not just for what's above, mind you. I felt alone and unloved in this relationship. I just wrote about it to explain the state of mind I was in when I met this other person that we'll call PS. PS was the total opposite. He was very in tune with his emotions. He was very, very intense. This will be important later. He really expressed love like I thought I needed. On our first date, the waitress asked how long we'd been together since he was so into me and touching me. He made me feel amazing. He had a huge house and a rather flashy lifestyle, so I assumed he was really well off. He told me he owned a car wash and a phone marketing company. Fast forward a bit, at this point we'd been dating for about a year, and he had just asked me and my son to move in with him. I wasn't 100% sure, but he prepared the room for my son nonetheless. As I started spending more time in his house, still keeping mine, I also started to see strange behavior. He'd be up all night but sleep all day. I also overheard a few phone calls where he was telling people they owed money and needed to pay, but the conversations didn't fit with a car wash or phone marketing business. At some point, he told me he was having money problems. He said huge clients were late in paying and that this was jeopardizing his house payments. So I, stupid me, offered to help. I'm missing a part of this story because it started as me offering help with the house since we were there a lot, still had my house though, but it ended up with me lending him $25,000. I cannot for the life of me remember that progression. The loan was supposed to be for the 3 weeks he said. I'd have it all back in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That $25,000 came from my retirement savings and my son's college money, so I had to pay a fine to access it. It's also money it took me 10 years to put aside. That money was very important to me. During those 3 weeks, I went out to have drinks with my friends and found him on a date with another woman. I saw him French kissing another woman. I said nothing. I went to his house, packed my things, and left. So anyway, I thought he'd be an adult and would still reimburse the $25K at the end of his 3 weeks. Big mistake. Someone I knew told me he was glad I left and proceeded to tell me about him. He said PS was a junkie, hooked on GHB, hence why he was so intense and so into his emotions. That also explained the erratic sleep-night patterns, but the final blow was when he told me PS was also a con man. A specialist, if you will, in defrauding older people by phone. His so-called quote-unquote phone marketing company. In the beginning, I wasn't sure I believed it. But then bits of what I had overheard in the last year started to make sense, and I realized it was all true. Back to this later. I tried having my money back many different ways. None worked. I was at the end of my rope, and since it was in my year post-divorce, and right after the 2008-2009 economic crash as well, I was poor as hell. So this is what I did. First, he had given me access to pay bills online. Not to his bank accounts, but to his emails, so I was able to investigate all his accounts with the same password. I printed and screenshotted every little bit of information relating to money. I found proof that he was indeed scamming people, and found the people he quote-unquote worked with, and even the name of the person at Western Union who facilitated the money transfer. I found out he was an organized criminal. I also found out he did this between the US and Canada. I started preparing for Strike 1. Strike 1. So, for Strike 1, I printed his face and the face of everyone working with and for him in defrauding people and left hundreds of flyers in his neighborhood. I also called the hotline for financial crime prevention in both Canada and the US and gave very specific details and names. Note that even if he had given me the money, this goes against my core values and I would have done the same thing either way. At this point, I was preparing Strike 2 as well. Strike 2. I was dumb in lending him money, but I at least did it the right way. I wrote a check, I didn't do cash, I wanted proof just in case. It would turn out to be a great idea. On the check, I had written that it was a loan. Thank you, Judge Judy, for this tip. Since he didn't pay me back, I prepared an invoice and sent it to me from his hacked email. When the time came to do my taxes, I filed the $25K as an expense using this invoice. I have many freelancers, I slid him in as one of them, and it passed. Don't ask me how I got his social security number, I can't remember, but I ended up having access to it, so I ratted him out to the IRS for hiding income. I found out later on through friends that the IRS started investigating him for unpaid taxes. I heard he had to pay 38% taxes on that $25K, plus pay a 20% fine for not declaring income. At this point, I was satisfied. I figured $9,500 in taxes plus $5,000 in fines was 50% of what he owed me. At least he didn't get away with it all. But remember, I told you on the check I had written that it was a loan. So I took him to court, and won. He didn't even show up. So he has to reimburse the full $25K plus court fees, plus what he owes to the IRS, so it's $39,500 that he was to pay for not reimbursing $25K. To this day, I still haven't seen a cent, but the rest of the story makes it worthwhile. At first, I thought the financial crime call I made had no effect. Well, it's now the cherry on top. What I didn't know at the time is that the IRS would team up with the wire fraud division and look at everything he did. They were not able to catch him on the wire fraud, but since the house he had did not fit with the money he was declaring, they got him on tax evasion and gave him a certain delay to pay back taxes. I heard it was only like 3 months, but I don't know if it's accurate. They got him so good they ended up freezing his accounts and he lost his house. The bank foreclosed it, and his debt to the IRS was still open. We're not in the US, so he won't go to jail for this, however. But my $25K that he did not want to repay ended up costing him over $500,000. And since you can't go bankrupt for a debt you owe to the government, I'm happy to tell you that at 40 years old, he had to move back with his parents and ask for welfare, and will probably be paying this for the rest of his life. The story is not finished, however. I just learned that he now has a job as a concierge in the apartment building of his parents, so I'll be contacting the court to have the money he owes me taken directly from his pay. The thing is, he has no idea I'm the culprit of all his bad fortune, and he recently sent me a message telling me he misses me, that I was an angel for him, and that he regrets what he did. Well, not me, loser. Not me. Oh man. I mean, here it is again, folks, the best kind of life-ending revenge. The kind that you bring on yourself. This is karma at work, folks. This is karma at work. He brought all of this upon himself. While, yes, OP had to go through fairly extensive measures to get him caught for all this stuff, nothing illegal was done on her part. At least, as far as I know. Maybe going into his bank accounts was illegal. I'm not sure exactly the gray area and that kind of stuff. But the point is, he did all of it. He was finally punished in very legal ways for the illegal things that he had done, both within the relationship as far as taking money goes, and outside of it as far as his illegal business dealings go. I believe wholeheartedly that there is a special place in hell for that kind of person who defrauds the elderly to make some money. That's pretty despicable, in my opinion. Thank you to everyone who watched this video. Be sure to subscribe for more daily Reddit content. Drop a like if you liked the video, and I will see you all tomorrow.